We all know the name, don't we? The Donner Party.
Yeah.
It conjures these immediate, pretty grim images. A desperate struggle, impossible choices, that brutal Sierra Nevada winter.
It really does. But what if that story, the one we think we know,
Mm.
the one shaped by those early, often sensational reports, what if it misses the deeper, the profoundly human truth underneath it all?
Exactly. So today, we're diving into that harrowing journey. We'll go from their hopeful start, all the way to that ultimate test of survival.
And we're guided by a really powerful perspective. A child survivor, Eliza P. Donner Hutton, who basically dedicated her life to setting the record straight.
Yeah, our main source is her account, The Expedition of the Donner Party and Its Tragic Fate. And this isn't just like dry history, it's woven from her own childhood memories, plus her decades-long fight to correct the narrative.
Right, alongside other documents from the time that help paint the picture.
So our mission here is to try and understand this complex history through the eyes of someone who actually lived it. We want to reveal some of the surprising facts, the insights that often get lost in, the dramatic retelling.
And hopefully offer you a more complete, maybe more empathetic understanding of what really happened out there.
Okay, so let's rewind. It's 1845. You've got families like the Donners and the Reeds, and they're drawn to this idea of California. It wasn't just desperation pushing them west, was it? It felt more aspirational for many.
That's a key point. It wasn't a desperate flight, not initially anyway. You had Captain John C. Fremont's reports circulating these maps, painting California as this land of equable climate and marvelous fertility.
Sounds pretty good.
Doesn't it? And families like the Donners and Reeds, they were prominent, they were organized, financially prepared. They showed up with strong wagons, good oxen. This was a well-considered move.
So hope and adventure were really driving them. Tell us a bit about the key figures, like George and Tamsin Donner. They seem to embody that initial spirit.
Well, George Donner, he was 62, a wealthy farmer, known fondly as Uncle George. Seems he was driven by, well, the spirit of adventure, as Eliza put it.
And his wife, Tamsin.
Ah, Tamsin Donner. She was quite remarkable. A former teacher, a writer, very cultured. She wasn't just going along, she actively prepared, even made sketches during the trip. She actually intended to write a book about it all.
Wow. So it was more than just reaching a destination for her.
Definitely. An intellectual pursuit, too. And those early days, they really reflected that ambition, that organization.
Oh, so?
Eliza remembered this farewell campfire, sang songs, told tales, drove homesickness from our hearts. It sounds almost idyllic, right? Our past was a sweet memory, our future, a beautiful dream.
A beautiful dream.
And they even started with a democratic structure, electing a Captain Russell. Tamsin's letters from the plains. They describe a well-run operation. Things like buffalo chips are excellent for fuel, wagons holding up, milk cows being incredibly useful. It started with such promise.
It really sounds like it. But we know things took a very dark turn. What was that critical decision, the one at the Little Sandy River, that just altered everything?
Ah, yes. July 19th, Little Sandy River. That's when they encountered this open letter from Lansford W. Hastings. He'd written a popular guide, and he was suggesting a new route, a supposed shortcut.
The Hastings cutoff. The infamous shortcut. Always tempting, isn't it, a shortcut?
Always. And there was another factor. Hastings' letter hinted that because of the war between Mexico and the U.S., California might need immigrants for its forces. So a quicker route seemed even more appealing, maybe avoiding conflict zones.
I see. So George Donner was elected captain for this specific group heading for California via the cutoff.
That's right. Hastings had painted this picture of a direct road needing to cross only 30-40 miles of desert.
Only 30-40 miles, which turned out to be.
Wildly inaccurate, yeah. Reed, Pike, and Stanton were sent ahead to check it out, and when Reed came back, he reported it was going to take immense effort. They needed occasional short clearings, even a full day's hard work, just to get through one thicket.
Doesn't sound like a shortcut.
Not at all. And then Tamsin Donner made this chilling discovery. She found fragments of a sign Hastings had left behind. Pieced together, it warned, 2 days, 2 nights, hard driving cross desert reach water.
Oh, wow. A direct warning.
A stark warning about the strain on their animals, and it proved tragically accurate. That shortcut, it was a trap.
And that feeling of being trapped, of things going wrong, must have just amped up the tension within the group, which then led to that awful Reed Snyder incident.
It did, October 5th. A dispute over helping with a wagon, an ox team. It escalated. Snyder struck Reed. Mrs. Reed jumped in to defend her husband and got hit herself.
Oh, no.
And Reed, in self-defense, stabbed Snyder. Snyder died.
That's shocking. That internal violence, it really signals a breakdown, doesn't it? Even before the worst of the weather hit.
Absolutely. It shows how quickly those community bonds could fray under that kind of pressure. The consequence for Reed was severe: banishment. His wife pleaded with him to just go right ahead to Sutter's Fort for help.
Did he go alone?
Walter Heron went with him. And they carried an urgent appeal from George Donner to Captain Sutter asking for aid, with George personally guaranteeing payment. It's a clear sign of things really starting to unravel.
And then the snow. The final devastating blow. October 28th, incredibly early. And the Donner family themselves were delayed.
Yeah, broken axle on one of their wagons, and George Donner had badly injured his hand. Just one thing after another.
And the snow wasn't just a light dusting.
No, the speed, the severity. It trapped them at 6,000 feet. Any plans for building proper log cabins? Gone. Snow was already 2 or 3 feet deep overnight. They had to improvise shelters fast, using pine trees, cloth, buffalo robes, whatever they could find.
I just can't imagine those conditions.
By mid-January, snow was reportedly 12 and 14 feet deep. Wood was scarce, water frozen solid. Eliza remembered children not having dry clothes for a week, utterly isolated, freezing, starving.
And in the middle of that frozen hell, Tamsin Donner, she made that incredible sacrifice. Tell us about that.
It's almost unbearable to think about. She feared her youngest children, Eliza, Georgia, and Francis, just wouldn't survive another storm. She begged 2 men from the Second Relief Party, Kincaid and Stone, to take them out to the settlements.
Egg them.
Yes, even offered them $500 in coin, a huge sum then. But she chose to stay behind herself, with her injured husband, George.
That's just an unimaginable act of love and sacrifice. It really puts a human face on the extremity, doesn't it?
It truly does. Eliza later wrote about being in one of those fateful cabins, hearing pitiful wails for food, terrifying threats yelled at crying children. But she also remembered small kindnesses, like Mattie Reed sneaking biscuits from her father's camp.
Small moments of humanity.
Exactly. And perhaps most poignantly, Eliza remembered her mother, Tamsin, sharing the very last bit of food with her youngest, sickest child. But Tamsin kept half a biscuit back, whispering to Eliza it was for sick father.
Oh my goodness.
It shows the depth of that love, that desperation, the absolute worst circumstances.
So while relief efforts were slowly getting organized, another group, the Forlorn Hope Party, 17 people, they left the main camp on December 16th to try and get help themselves.
Yes, a desperate gamble. But their rations ran out just 6 days later, December 22nd. And this is where the story takes its darkest turn, where the reality is often blurred by, well, sensationalism.
Right. What do the accounts actually say?
They're stark. Stanton, one of the rescuers who had come back to help, froze to death. Patrick Dolan. They drew lots, a desperate measure. He drew the fatal slip, but his companions couldn't bring themselves to do it. He died soon after anyway.
N.W.F. Graves.
On his deathbed, he told his daughters to put aside their natural repugnance and use his body to survive, to save their family still back at the lake camp.
It's hard to process that level of desperation. How does Eliza's account help us understand these choices, moving beyond the cannibalism headlines?
Her narrative is crucial here. It pulls us away from judgment, forces us to confront the grim reality. She's clear. Flesh of the dead was used to sustain the living. But it was not used until after the pittance of food left by the first relief had long been consumed, not until after the wolves had dug the snow from the graves.
So it's the absolute last resort.
The absolute last resort. It wasn't savagery. It was the final, desperate act to stay alive when everything else was gone. That distinction is vital.
And even in that horror, there were these flashes of human spirit, weren't there? Like William Eddy managing to hunt a deer.
An incredible story. Eddie was desperately weak, but he managed to fire his rifle 3 times and finally brought down a large buck. He and Mary Graves, another survivor with him, immediately knelt down and drank the warm blood just for the strength.
Wow, primal survival.
It provided temporary relief. But tragically, another man, Jay Fosdick, heard the shots and tried to reach them, but died before he could get there. These are the details Eliza brings forward, not just horror, but that profound, desperate struggle to simply endure.
Eventually, news of their plight did reach the settlements in California. William Eddy, after his own terrible ordeal with the Forlorn Hope, got to Johnson's ranch in January 1847.
Right, and he dictated a letter to Alcalde John Sinclair at Sutter's Fort, basically pleading for immediate rescue.
What was the response like down there?
Well, you have to remember, San Francisco was caught up in the Mexican-American War. Most able-bodied men were already enlisted, so raising a relief party wasn't easy.
But they did manage it.
Yes, the community eventually rallied. A public meeting raised over $1,300, which was a princely sum back then. Several relief parties were organized. It shows that help did come eventually, despite the difficulties.
And the journey out for the survivors, especially the children, must have been just as brutal in its own way.
Absolutely harrowing. Eliza, Georgia, and Francis. They made that trek with the third relief party. Eliza remembered being dressed in repurposed silk dresses their mother had saved.
Silk dresses.
Yeah, dresses Tamsin had intended for their life in California. They joined other child survivors like Mary Donner, whose foot had been terribly frostbitten.
And the reunion at Sutter's Fort?
Bittersweet doesn't even cover it. Eliza's older sisters, Litha and Leanna, had survived with the first relief. They were anxiously waiting, had even made up a bed for their parents.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah. Seeing their three little sisters arrive alone was just a sad sight, bringing anguish and fear.
And so these children began new lives, carrying this immense invisible weight. Eliza recalled kindnesses, like a boy secretly giving her milk at the fort.
Yes, small acts of compassion. She eventually found a home with the Bruners, Swiss immigrants in Sonoma. They owned a butcher shop, a dairy.
How did that shape her, do you think?
Well, her childhood was a mix. School, getting her first pair of green shoes, surviving smallpox. There was also a difficult relationship with her foster grandmother, which apparently made her determined to leave for Sacramento later. But those early years, while safe, were undoubtedly lived in the shadow of the Sierras. It must have fueled that lifelong commitment to memory, to truth.
Which brings us to later years. Eliza, now an adult, Eliza P. Donner Hutton, living in Sacramento, she encounters Edwin Bryant's book, What I Saw in California.
Right. And while the book had some facts, she saw it as interwoven with wild rumors and the false and sensational statements that had been published earlier, particularly in the California Star newspaper.
And this really sparked her mission, didn't it?
It absolutely did. She was deeply hurt by the language used, coarse and brutal, she called it, especially the accusations of gloating cannibals, the graphic, often inaccurate descriptions of mutilation. She knew that wasn't the reality, the desperation she'd witnessed.
So she set out to correct the record.
Yes, to honor the memory of everyone who suffered and perished. She argued forcefully that the survivors were simply too weak, too emaciated to dig proper graves or move the dead easily through deep snow. Mutilation, she insisted, was never from choice, never cannibalistic.
Did she have evidence to counter those sensational claims?
She did. She pointed to notes from rescuers like Agrila Glover, dated February 19, 1847, explicitly stating the immigrants hadn't even started consuming the dead yet. They were still surviving on boiled hides.
That's a crucial timeline detail.
Very crucial. And William Murphy, another survivor, his recollections back this up. The use of the dead only happened after the tiny amount of food from the first relief ran out, and after wolves had disturbed the bodies buried in the snow. It counters decades of lurid storytelling.
And she also tried to clarify the circumstances of her own mother's death, Tamsin Donner, who stayed behind.
Yes, that was clearly deeply important to her. She highlighted accounts like Thornton's, which stated Tamsin chose to stay with her husband, performing those last sad offices of affection, knowing she would likely perish herself.
There were regrets from some rescuers, too, weren't there?
There were. John Baptist, one of the helpers, later expressed keenest regret that he and another man hadn't stayed longer at the camp, wondering if they might have saved that little woman, Tamsin.
And then there's the whole Keseberg controversy.
Right. Louis Keseberg was the last survivor found, discovered amongst, well, human remains. With conflicting stories about Tamsin's death and some hidden money, it's messy and traumatic, and it shows how extreme duress can obscure truth, making Eliza's fight for accuracy even more essential.
It was so personal for her. She remembered being taunted as a child about the Donner Party.
Exactly. But she held on to the memories of the tenderest sympathies and bravest self-denials she actually witnessed in her camp. Her dedication, looking into her personal history, it's a powerful lesson in how history gets written, and sometimes how badly it gets distorted.
So what starts as this hopeful journey west spirals into one of America's most infamous, most tragic survival stories. But Eliza P. Donner Hutton's account, her lifelong work, it gives us a chance to move past the easy sensationalism.
It really does. It lets us try to understand the human experience behind the headlines, the love, the sacrifice, the impossible choices people made when trapped in those mountains.
The Donner Party story, seen through Eliza's eyes, isn't just about unimaginable hardship, is it?
No, it's also this powerful testament to human resilience. Not just the physical act of surviving, but that decades-long commitment to truth, to memory, ensuring the real story with all its difficult humanity, gets told.
It makes you think, doesn't it? What really stands out to you about this whole journey, and especially about how a child survivor spent her life fighting to make sure her family's story, and the story of everyone involved, was told with accuracy, but also with compassion. Something to definitely mull over until our next deep dive.